Here I am, climbing up, feeling great, getting love. Here I go, risk it all, be worth it now, and that's for sure. Watch me as a Rocketeer.
All right, we're live. Episode 3, Fight Talk Down Under. Thank you to everyone who's listening, who's still with us. 3 episodes in. I'm Dan Meehan from Fight News Australia, and of course my co-host, as you might have seen on social media, is Lockjaw Justin Van Heerden, who was successful at Hex Fight Series 22 on the weekend. Justin, how are you?
Doing good. Back at it for episode 3, managed to stay, I guess, reasonably pretty. So didn't end up having to do the podcast with any sort of busted facial features or anything like that. So that's always a bonus.
It looks like Joshua O'Reilly might have knocked the hair off your head, though.
Yeah, went for the shave, went for the change up, making the debut of bald Lockjaw. So we'll see. Maybe this is the mythical fighter stage for myself, and we'll see what that sort of leads to.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we'll start off with the events of the weekend. Hey, it was Hex Fight Series 22. You're obviously in the cage yourself, and this one against Joshua O'Reilly. Round 1, we kind of saw Lockjaw did what Lockjaw does. He latched on. You rode him like a backpack, basically, and credit has to go to Josh Riley really for surviving there, because time and time again it looked like you're about to close the show, but he just he managed to peel a hand off and keep himself in the game. And then round 2, it sort of turned a bit pear-shaped, and then you closed the show pretty quickly in round 3. So how do you recall the fight going?
Yeah, it was obviously, the I guess there was always going to be a sort of grappling sort of exchange at some point. Whether that was going to be initiated by him or by me, I guess it was always going to happen at some point. The game plan was just, for the first round especially, was just sort of pick him apart, like stay at a range, be constantly moving, stay outside his lead hand, and like be at that range that that we fight at and train to fight at, that gives someone a lot of, I guess, hurdles that they need to sort of be able to get over to even get close enough to throw a shot. And I think straight away that was sort of evident with Josh. And throughout the fight, he was only really throwing counters mostly through the fight. He very rarely went first. And obviously in the second round he did go first. That when he caught me with a right hook, it was sort of where I kind of knew that he was going to throw that 1-2. Was able to draw him in with that, and I was looking to set up a counter myself, and instead of going, a counter straight down the pipe, a right hand, I kind of went to loop the hook a little bit. He made a sort of incredible sort of adjustment through his own lead hook, able to land it flush behind the ear. And, those are going to be the ones that could potentially close the show. But obviously, I'm pretty experienced now, and I was pretty composed. He obviously landed the shot. It was, beautifully timed shot, but was able to stay composed, just listen to Joe and Alex, and kind of, get myself back to neutral and go, okay, let's reset. And then even that round, although, looking at it and judging that sort of round, I'd probably give it to Josh based on the fact that he did land that big shot and did put me down. That kind of, especially in the eyes of the judges, I guess it wouldn't be strange to look at that and go, okay, we'll give him that round. Because up until that point, there wasn't anything major in the round that stuck out for either one of us. And even though I finished the round on top of him in a sort of dominant way, it was sort of, I knew going into the third round, and the boys are pretty evident with it. They said, we got to win this round, and we got to do it dominantly. We got to take round 3 dominantly. So, when I came out for the third round, I guess what kind of threw him off initially, and what even allowed me to set up the takedown easily, was I didn't go first. I didn't try and put hands on him first and go first. So he was waiting for that opportunity to counter. It didn't happen. So he kind of was going, backwards, almost trying to draw me in, trying to entice me to try and punch him and try and throw some strikes for him to counter. So then when I knew that was the sort of plan, I made that read. Obviously stepped through with the sort of 1-2, and then into the takedown, level change, got to the cage. And I think once I hit the cage with him and adjusted and got the body lock, I kind of just felt him kind of go, because I didn't get a resistance. I was expecting a resistance, and Volk actually yelled out once we hit the cage. He was like, if he defends, if he's got strong hips, pick him up, bring him over to us, because that was actually going to be the plan. Pick him up, run him to my corner, drop him in front of the boys, and then just go through the motions and listen to them and kind of, just do that. But he kind of, it was just kind of, I think he just, whether it was a combination of the time away, a bit of an adrenaline dump, just being tired, he just kind of, just allowed me to get to the body lock, and then kind of just gave out. And then from there, it was kind of my world. It's something I do quite well. It's always in my back pocket, which I spoke about. And was able to flatten him out and get the choke. But like you said, man, credit to that dude. He's an absolute savage. That first round, a lot of people would have given up in a lot of those positions, but he kept fighting. He was, even like the third or fourth time I got under the neck and was going for the choke, he's like gurgling, making all sorts of funny sounds, and I can like feel the dude fading out, and he's just like, when I thought, okay, this is it, he's reaching back, he's peeling that hand, and credit to him, he was trying to win that fight the entire time. He was trying to do everything he can to sort of get after it and get the results. So man, we end up having a 3-round sort of bit of a war, and it was an entertaining fight. And I have nothing but respect for that dude. Credit to him, and it's great to get in there and experience my next test and face some adversity and ultimately come out and get the win.
Yeah, I think there was probably a bit of a cardio difference in the end there. I think those grappling exchanges can be pretty tiring, right? He sort of in that third round, it looked like he was possibly out of gas, and you still seemed pretty fresh. So I think that from the outside looking in, that sort of seemed like the resistance was kind of quashed at that point, and that's sort of why you're able to kind of close the show pretty quickly. But that's it's kind of crazy to think that part of the game plan would be to pick up your opponent and bring him over to your corner and plop him down. That's incredible insight there. That's really cool.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I guess a lot of people forget, man, I'm pretty experienced in this sport. Like in total, I've had like well north of 20 MMA fights, like almost 30. And then as a pro, I think this was like my 13th fight. Like, so I'm in there. When I'm in there, I'm hearing everything. Like I'm hearing my opponent. I'm listening to, his breathing. I'm listening to what his corner's saying. I'm listening to my corner. I can hear the crowd. I can hear, like I'm aware of everything. I'm comfortable in there. And especially this time around, I was probably the most relaxed and calm and, that I've ever been in there. And like, that's even an example of that was in the first round when he was throwing some strikes, and I knew he was going to finish off with a kick. And then I even like could hear his corner saying, left high kick, let's finish with the left high kick. So I just anticipated, okay, at some point there's going to be a kick coming my way. And then, made that read, was able to feel him throw that 1-2 and automatically shoot, because I knew there was going to be a kick coming, so he's going to be off balance. But that's, that's a credit to just experience, the training that I do, the people I'm training with. And then obviously, this time around, I actually was very fortunate. I was able to have my coaches there with me. I was able to have Joe and Alex there with me and have them in my corner. And, that made all the difference in the world. But yeah, I like I touched on, like, in last week's episode, I never, ever, ever want to be in a position where I lose a fight based on something that I could have controlled, based on like my gas tank or my cardio. And that, whether it was growing up in South Africa above sea level or whatever it is, that's always something that I've had, like a natural sort of good gas tank, I guess. And then you mix that with the training that we do at Freestyle. I knew that like I was in shape. I could have done, like, that's what I said to myself going after the third round. I was like, you're fresh. You can fight another 2 rounds if you need to. Like, you can do this for 25 minutes if you need to, easily. And then looking over across at him, I could see him breathing heavy, and I was like, okay, well, he's going to give up if he gets put into a position with adversity this time round. And someone else that I spoke to, I believe, so Colby Thickness, who trains at my gym, he made a good assessment too, which we kind of thought about as well. In the second round, when he did land that shot and he kind of swarmed on me, he threw a couple punches, but then kind of like grabbed a hold of me and then was just set on, holding on to me and controlling me. And his corner was screaming at him. He's got like Jabbar Askarov, Rodolfo Marquez, he's got these guys, like experienced guys, yelling at him to like disengage and strike. And I was even in there like thinking to myself, I was like, oh, well, he's tired. He's gassed. He's tired. That's why he's not letting go. He's not making any effort to disengage. And even if he did, I was going to stop that, because if you watch closely, I'm securing behind the elbow and the tricep. I'm controlling his arms. I'm weaving my arms through so he can't just easily disengage, because Volk's yelling at me going, we don't let him leave there now. He's come into this world. Let's keep him there. But yeah, it's just an experience thing. And like I touched on, it's a tough task to come in after 3 years away and fight. Just in general, it's an even tougher task to come in and fight someone like me, who's got experience, who's been very active in these 3 years. And I'm very fortunate with who my coaches and training partners are.
Definitely, and yeah, it was definitely noticeable from watching at home. Just when he grabbed onto you after he sort of put you down with that punch, it kind of seemed just unfathomable that he'd had this success standing up, and then suddenly he wants to lock onto Lockjaw. Like, that sort of just seemed a bit counterintuitive. But again, like you sort of touched on there before, it might be a bit of an experience thing as well, a bit of ring rust. I think he's had maybe 7 fights. Maybe he's not quite at that point yet where he can sort of take instruction during the round, or again, it might have been fatigue as well, like you said. But it was kind of an interesting choice on the night, and probably one that he'd look back and look back at and learn from there. But I'm glad you sort of brought up the experience level there. You're 8 wins now as a professional. Like, where to from here now? You've sort of you're back on the winning track. What do you got? What's in your mind? What do you got lined up?
Well, my goal for the first quarter of this year is just, I want to try and get 3 fights in, before the sort of halfway mark for the year, and kind of, 3 fights, 3 wins, hopefully 3 finishes. And then, that puts me in a really good spot to sort of, be ready for whatever's ahead. So, I'm back in the gym. I'm training. Jamie Blacky's in his last hard week of training, his last part of camp. So, he flies out on Sunday, and then he's in action. We obviously got Blake Donnelly preparing for his matchup with Josh Kuhn. Volko's in camp now preparing for Zombie. So, I'm stuck in helping the boys with their sort of stuff, just like they were helping me grind in this sort of camp and in these camps. And just kind of staying ready. There's a bunch of featherweight fights on that March Eternal card. I want to see everything go ahead as planned, but, this is the fight game. We're in the COVID time. A bunch of things can happen, and potentially, I might need to slot in there and kind of, save some fights like I've done in the past. But, other than that, I guess the focus would just be to look at sort of April, May. If I don't end up getting in on that March card, look at April and May, fight again, and then try and get one more in before July if possible. But there's a few factors. The boys are obviously going to be away in April in America, so Volko can defend his belt. This time round, if that's the case, and if things get held up or some craziness happens, like, I'm going to wait for them to be back before I fight. I owe that to myself, and I'll fight anyone at any time at any notice, and I've shown that before. But I owe it to myself to give myself the best, I guess, setup for when I'm walking into these fights, and that is having my coaches with me. So the outlook's obviously to fight as much as I can throughout this year. Keep winning, back, like you said, back in the win column, keep the momentum going, and who knows, hopefully everything runs smoothly and there's no more interruptions, and we can just sort of get a big year behind me and a minimum have another 2 fights.
Yeah, well, if there's one thing that you've shown in your career so far, is that you're not one to shy away from an opportunity. So, who knows when Lockjaw might pop up again. But another person who's obviously not one to shy away from an opportunity was Jasper Dunphy. He stepped up in the main event on Hex on the weekend, taking on Abel Brights on short notice. He stepped in for JJ Ambrose, who, as we sort of chatted about earlier today, was struck down with COVID, leading into the fight. So. I guess it was probably expected that Abel Brights would probably win that matchup, but Jasper Dunphy looks a solid prospect. So, how did you assess that one?
Yeah, obviously credit to Jasper stepping in to take the fight with Abel. He trains at Absolute. He's got a good team behind him, good coaches. He's sharing the mats with guys like Jack Jenkins, Roger Shippen, Joseph Luciano, like Sam Hibbard, Khan Offley, you name it. He's got a stable of killers that's there helping him prepare, and obviously Simon is there, coaching the boys, doing the work to prepare him and stuff like that. So, it was no surprise watching Jasper sort of accept this fight and get in there and get after it with Abel. And yeah, but as you sort of touched on, Abel's got a bit more experienced, and didn't have to cut weight as well, even because they moved the fight was at middleweight. So then all those things are going to factor in. You got a guy who did a full on camp, didn't have to cut weight, and a dangerous guy who's experienced, who's fought the who's who. You like coming into this fight. His last couple of fights were like Jamie Malaki, BJ Bland, as you touched on. He's fought Brad Riddell. He's fought, the guys fought absolute killers. And watching the fight, Abel went out there and was he was calm in there. He was relaxed. He didn't look like he's a guy who'd had all that time off. He's got a pretty weird stance. He stands kind of side on. He throws that lead leg kind of Wonder Boy style. Obviously likes to box, likes to make it dirty, getting close. As you saw there, they're on the cage. He landed a beautiful right hand, kind of sent Jasper backwards a bit, kind of swarmed on him like you've seen him do in his previous fights and get after it and make it violent and try and put him away. Jasper adjusted, went for a takedown, and then, you're taking down someone who's got a very, very slick and dangerous guard. Like, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, absolute gun. He's got a very dangerous guard. Like time and time again, I've seen that dude just wrap people up from guard and, snatch an arm or whatever. He's able to grab a guillotine and ultimately, someone who's got an attacking guard like that, who is skilled in that area, they snatch the neck or an arm or something like that. That's going to close the show, and that's sort of what you saw there. But yeah, obviously it was a great performance from Abel, but credit to Jasper for stepping in and giving us a fight, and credit to the team from Hex for putting a show together and moving forward, man. Like, they had a bunch of fights that got destroyed based on various reasons with COVID and a few other things that could have been prevented with, like, there was talks of certain fighters accepting a matchup a couple of days before they were scheduled to fight on Hex and then weren't able to fight on Hex. Stuff like that's all silliness, and that's involved in this business. Ask any promoter, they'll tell you that. But yeah, to see them still move forward with the event, there were 5 fights on the night. The place was packed. Melbourne's a great place for that. People come and support sports. Is something that we spoke about, whether it's MMA, whether it's boxing, whether it's the AFL, the NRL, like basketball, Olympics, tennis, doesn't matter. Like, people support sports in Melbourne. So, that was great to see. It was an awesome atmosphere. So I think it's a credit to sort of, the team from Hex, but then also these fighters like Jamie Hunt, like Jasper Dunphy, who stepped up and allowed these fights to go ahead.
Absolutely, and look, it's a crazy time down here in Melbourne for MMA at the moment. All the promotions are coming back to the table. We've got Demolition on again this weekend, and Bushido and some other sort of smaller events are cropping up there as well. So it's a crazy time in Australian MMA at the moment, because, like I just kind of touched on there, the promotions that have been lying dormant are just now all coming back to the table and rushing their events through. And Demolition were even sort of scheduled to go head to head with Eternal before Eternal was cancelled this weekend. So it just shows you just how much of a rush there is for dates at the moment. But do you feel like, how do you feel about the scene at the moment? Is there room for more events? Like, obviously Demolition are up to their 5th event. We've got Bushido down here that are on there coming up to their 2nd event. Is there, I guess they all serve a purpose along the way, but is there sort of room for more events? Do you feel like it dilutes the talent pool, or is it just more opportunities for you guys to get in there? How do you sort of look at the scene at the moment?
It definitely can. It can be a bit of both. It can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. When you get every fucking person that's just, okay, I'm gonna run a fight show, and then you got these people that are putting shows together. In some cases that they have no one's best interest in mind except their own. And they're just kind of like, getting on and involved and jumping on a fad. But with some of these shows that you mentioned, man, that's like the opposite. You're seeing people that are actually like care about the sport, they're invested in it, they're passionate about it, and they want to put on events and they want to give amateurs a platform to come in and get some fights, get some experience, and ultimately, go into the pro ranks and pursue this thing as a career if that's what they want to do. And Demolition's a great example of that. Wayne and the team there, man, they're doing great work. They're putting on awesome events. They're matching them. The fights, like how they're matching them and the matchups that they're doing, like it's very, very critical, and they're thinking about it, and it's quite well done. There's been a bunch of their events and fights that I've watched where I'm like, wow, this matchup was really thought out. It was a great matchup. And they've continued to do that, and this event's going to be no different. So, when you're seeing people that are doing it like that from a good place, that obviously care about the sport, want to promote these fighters, want to promote the events and stuff like that, that's awesome to see. But then when you see with some of these other promotions, like there's some people involved in this sport and these promotions that it's just, man, like I talk to people all the time, and I'm like, man, these people should not be involved and around at all. Like, this is the stuff that a few years ago was like hindering, from having events in a cage or having people, like in Parliament and that go like, we don't want this stuff like in our state or in our city, or like we're like, this is like the wrong, giving it the wrong idea, almost like, but like, I'm one of those people that'll call it like that. If I feel like there's people doing some good stuff, good work out there, I'll call it. If I feel like there's some clown just trying to put an event together, just for the sake of it and for some social media clout and just to be involved in the show and have their own little moment in the spotlight, I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, just as a pure disclaimer, really, I was in attendance at Bushido MMA as well for their first show, and you never know what to expect coming into a brand new promotion, first ever show. But it was actually a really fun show. They're sort of doing more of like a Eastern style thing with like an opening ceremony and everything like that. And the matchups were good. The promoter Dennis is a really nice guy, and he's really sort of seems to be passionate about the sport. So I think there is a place for the promotions like that, as a way to sort of bring fighters through to the bigger promotions like Hex and Eternal and whatnot. But I guess in terms of the larger promotions, there's some new faces sort of turning up in there as well. Like this week, we've seen a bit of movement from PFL, the Professional Fighters League. It's probably one that we can touch on here. Is that obviously they signed with Stan last week to sort of show their events over here. It was sort of getting coverage in this part of the world was a bit of a struggle with PFL previously, and they've signed some Australian and New Zealand talent. So there's obviously, there's a real show of intent from them as well at the moment, bringing in some talent just to try and get some eyeballs from this part of the world. And, they're sort of proclaiming at the moment that they're the second largest promotion in the world. I don't know that that's quite correct just yet, but, we're really seeing some moves from them. So they've announced the signings of Rob Wilkinson, who's obviously ex-UFC fighter, current Hex light heavyweight champion. And Sam K as well, who's a Hex. Is he heavyweight champion over there, or he's?
I believe so.
I think he is. I think he knocked out Ricky Beechin. For the belt. Yeah.
So I was going to say it's either him or Ricky that had it.
Yeah. And obviously Aaron Blackie as well, who's another Eternal. Eternal veteran, and then of course BJ Bland from New Zealand. So they're really kind of just bringing in some talent from over there. So it's kind of a fun sort of time to be an Aussie fight fan. But what do you make of the PFL? Have you watched much of their stuff, and sort of where do you think they fit into the landscape?
Yeah, I think PFL's a cool promotion. I like what they do. I like how they do. Their seasons, and then they're doing those. They're doing sort of the events. How you're doing the Grand Prix and that, and handing out those $1 million prizes to the winners and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. I like their events. Obviously, it was cool to see some of these people that have been around the game for a while now, especially in their sort of last season. Ultimately win the prizes and cash in and win like $1 million. You got like Ray Cooper the third, guys like that. Been around the scene a while. To see these guys get the benefits now of a promotion like that and earn some good money like that for their families. That's wicked. How can you not like that? And then obviously, seeing them, trying to kind of like sign in some of these guys from the Oceania region, it's a credit to how the sport's evolving here and kind of the talent that we have here. Like, look at that UFC card. We had like 7 Australian or like Oceanic fighters, I think in total or something on there on like a pay-per-view, so why would you not want to start getting more eyeballs on this region and kind of give, tap into this market a bit more? So I think it's a good move from PFL. It's a smart business move to try kind of tap into this region, and you're going to potentially be able to snatch away some really talented fighters and take them to sort of your organization that ultimately the UFC might be like, oh damn, like that would have been such a good signing for us to get. And then maybe they'll be more proactive when that person is out of their contract, like you're seeing now with like Kayla Harrison and stuff like that, being a bit of a free agent. The UFC might be like, okay, like we need to capitalize on this because obviously you missed the mark the first time. We don't want to do that again. Competition's always good, and different sort of pathways are always good, and different opportunities for fighters to get out there and do what they want to do and potentially win world titles and earn lots of money doing it. I think it's all incredible.
Yeah, you sort of touched on maybe them snapping up some fighters that UFC might kind of look at in envy, I guess, there. And I honestly, in my opinion, I think Rob Wilkinson is probably one of those. We've talked about doing an episode of the podcast down the track where we sort of we go through, and we're probably peeling back the curtain a little bit here, but where we go through some of the fighters that are on the local scene that are ready to step up to the big leagues. Yeah. For mine, Rob Wilkinson probably would have been the top of that list. I think he's going to be a real handful in PFL. He's a guy who's in his prime. He's stepped up to light heavyweight now, and he looks just physically imposing. He's got all the skills. I think that guy's going to be really one to watch. In the PFL. I think he sort of got signed. I think he might have been like 25 years old maybe when he got signed to the UFC. Yeah. Obviously fought CR Bahadizada and Israel Adesanya, so he got some pretty difficult matchups as well to boot. So undefeated outside of the UFC, I think that guy's going to be a real handful in the PFL.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think he was. Yeah, I think he was killing himself a bit to make middleweight as well. He looks incredible at light heavyweight. He looks super healthy. He looks gigantic, actually. It's like when he fought that last time he fought Daniel Almeida, I was kind of like, how did you make middleweight? Like, how did you even do that?
He looked like the Incredible Hulk, and he tells me he was cutting. I can't remember what the figure was. I think it was like 13 kilos or something ridiculous like that to make middleweight, which is insane. So, yeah,
that's mental. So you can't expect him to. Can't expect to perform well when you're doing that sort of stuff to your body, like, and then especially trying to step in there with someone like Adesanya, like, no shot. But at light heavyweight, yeah, the dude's going to be a problem, man. And I think at light heavyweight, even if he got signed to the UFC, he'd be giving those people a lot of trouble in that division. I mean, that's a cracking division now with a lot of young talent coming through and these new sort of guys. So, but yeah, I think, for sure Wilkinson's got potential at light heavyweight to do well in the PFL and potentially, win a Grand Prix like that and snatch that $1 million prize and, do very well for himself.
And what do you make of Aaron Blackie? He's a guy who's obviously been off for a little while now. I think his last fight was, almost 3 years ago, and he's sort of it was kind of a signing that kind of came out of nowhere, I feel like, for the PFL. But he's making his debut next month against Edwin Cooper Jr. And we'll obviously cover that one in a bit more detail closer to the date. But what do you make of that signing and sort of what are his prospects over there?
Yeah, Aaron's been around the game for a while, man. He's obviously a very talented martial artist. He's a black belt in judo, black belt in jiu-jitsu. The dude's talented, man, and he's coaching every day at his gym, and I think he's involved in a couple of different gyms. And the dude's, you can tell he's a student of the game. He's a pretty intellectually smart dude, man. I think he's got a couple of uni degrees in his back pocket as well too. So the guy's obviously. He's a smart guy. He seems like he's obsessed with the sport. He's obviously very talented. He's got the credentials behind him as well. I think from memory, I believe Aaron Blackie's 8-1 in MMA. He's done quite well for himself. He's
8-2, I think.
8-2. There we go. Yeah, I think that's where he's sitting at. He's got potential to do really well, especially in the PFL. Especially with his skill set with his grappling pedigree and and his ability to, get a hold of people and, basically hit them with a planet, as they'd say, with the judo background. I think he'll do quite well. He hasn't fought for a while. It was, like you said, this signing came as a surprise. Like, when I kind of read that, I was like, oh, it's interesting. Like, great, credit to his team and good on him and that. But I'm interested to see. He hasn't really, he hasn't been kind of fighting these last couple of years. It's a fight that I was kind of expecting that if this didn't come about, I was expecting sooner rather than later, or at some point I was going to end up sharing the cage with that guy. But like I always sort of speak about, man, like while you're here, on the scene together, you're obviously trying to fight the best guys and get after it. But when you see someone take that sort of next step, you can't not be happy for people, man. Like, that's what it's about. There's no, like, there's people that are kind of like, will have like the tall poppy syndrome sort of thing, and be a bit frustrated by stuff like that. But it's all just a bonus, like we sort of spoke about. Guys getting signed to that next sort of stage, whether it's the PFL, the UFC, one championship, it brings all those eyeballs back to this region. And there's so much talent here now, and we're kind of booming here. So it's just better for everyone. Like, if you look at some of these other places, man, like it'd be pretty difficult. Like, imagine being in Brazil right now, trying to take that next step and get signed to a promotion. Like, I'm sure it's a lot more difficult to get that next step in your career in somewhere like Brazil than it is, here in Australia. So yeah, I think he'll do quite well. The featherweight sort of stable of people that they have in PFL is really, really good. It's definitely going to be a tough division to sort of make your claim in, but yeah, he's definitely got the potential. So I'm excited to see all these new signings from the Oceanic region and see what they can sort of bring to the PFL.
And they say a rising tide lifts all ships, right? If Australian fighters are getting signed to promotions like that and doing well, then that's good for everyone, right? They're going to come back and they're going to come knocking on the Australian fighters' doors again. So I don't see how it can really be a bad thing. Obviously, there's a little bit of envy there, but I think ultimately it's a good thing for all fighters in this region. But as a fighter coming through the local scene, you're obviously deep in the local scene. Is the PFL, seeing the moves that they're making, is that something to aspire to? Like, I ask this question a lot, like, where do you want to get to in your career? In my interviews, and I get a wide ranging answers, and a lot of guys will say, no to Bellator, no PFL, I want to get to the UFC. But as someone coming through, do you see the PFL, is that something to aspire to now?
100%. I mean, especially when they're doing these Grand Prix and stuff like that, man, the winner gets $1 million. Like, if you're a young fighter coming up, at the end of the day, you might have your own sort of individual goal for the sport, but $1 million to provide for you and whoever you're sort of close to you, I mean, potential to win that and secure that, that's, it's not a bad thing. And I think now you've seen with some of these people coming over, like, you saw Ben Askren come over from one championship. You've seen Michael Chandler come over from Bellator. They're potentially looking at signing Kyle Harrison, who was in the PFL anyway. I mean, all roads eventually could lead to the UFC, which is the pinnacle, I guess, for a lot of people. So whether you go to the PFL and kind of, put in the grind there, win some fights in there, win a Grand Prix, put sort of, put things together, and then after that, when you're in free agency, go, okay, now I want to go to the UFC and do it in that sort of capacity. The opportunities are going to be there for you to do that 100%. I guess it just comes down to the individual sort of fighter and what their kind of pursuit is and what they want to do. For me, for example, there is nothing sort of that would come close to me meeting my goal other than a UFC world title. Whether I have to take, I might have to take that route and fight in Bellator or the PFL and take those opportunities as they're given to me. But eventually I see myself, being in the featherweight division in the UFC, and, starting the climb up towards that belt. And that's just, that's my sort of thing. But I'm sure for someone else, their goal might just be to earn enough money to provide for them and their family, and that's all they sort of want to do and all they sort of really care about. And that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you do, you like fighting, it's a way that you can do that, and it's a way that you enjoy doing that. Why not get after it? Take the best opportunity that's gonna be given to you. And if that's the PFL, where, like we've touched on, you can make some decent cash and potentially win $1 million, definitely an awesome thing.
It's nice to have options, right? Like in years gone by, you sort of had to make your way up through the local scene, and really the UFC was where the money was. But now you can make a living as an MMA fighter, fighting in PFL or One Championship or Bellator. So it's nice to I guess it's nice to have options, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're seeing, like, there's just going to constantly be opportunities for fighters to do that and sort of cash in now and jump on some of these other sort of promotions that are popping up and sort of gaining traction. And there's these guys that are sort of, if you're sort of fighting and money's the focus, there's these guys that like to scrap and that. Look at the bare knuckle boxing. These guys are getting paid a decent amount of money to get in there and box and just get after it and fight. And it's entertaining, it's eyeballs, it gives you all those things that fighters kind of like about the sport, where the attention's on you, you're under the bright lights, you're in there testing yourself against another person, and if that means that you can earn a decent amount of money doing it, then why not? So the more opportunities, the better it is. 100%.
Yeah, I guess you guys are prize fighters at the end of the day, so you got to put food on the table eventually. But speaking of the UFC, anyway, well, we weren't really speaking of the UFC, were we? That's probably not my best segue ever there. But in the it's only episode 3. Look, this is still a work in progress. Just corrected myself mid-sentence there, but. In the UFC on the weekend, Australia was represented. We had Jessica Rose Clark in there against Stephanie Egger. It obviously hasn't gone all that well. At the end of the day, it ended in an armbar submission loss for Jessica Rose Clark. She snapped a two-fight win streak, but from where I sat, just watching that one, it seemed like a strange sort of game plan coming up against Stephanie Egger, who's obviously a judo specialist, right? She's got that sort of Ronda Rousey style, and so it proved with the armbar finish. But sort of watching the fight and watching Jess just kind of engage in the clinch pretty much straight out the gate, and then get tossed by a judoka. It seemed like the game plan was a little bit off for me, but particularly in the first round when both fighters are dry, it seemed like a bit of an unusual thing to do. So, but how did you assess it anyway?
Yeah, that was like shades of Katz and Ngannou versus Ronda Rousey kind of type deal. Just what do you like? What was your coach doing? What was your corner doing? Like, in your experience enough, you've had like 18 odd professional MMA fights. Like, why are you putting yourself in her best case scenario like position? So I thought that, it was very strange, and it was a weird kind of thing to watch play out. Like, Jess has been so violent in her last 2 fights that she's sort of won, and like, just getting after it, being destructive on the feet. And then if she was on the ground, she was on top, and she was, landing some hard shots and looking to, hurt people, not giving anyone the chance to sort of throw up any submissions or get comfortable while they're on the bottom, because she was just inflicting damage. But this time around, that's not sort of what you saw. You just kind of saw, you almost just gave the fight to Stephanie. And like you touched on, man, someone that's that experienced and that talented in that area, that's not what you want to do. And then now you've, like you said, you've lost now. You've got, you got your arm snatched off, and a 2-fight win streak just got snapped based on just terrible fight IQ, just a bad fight IQ and bad sort of decision making. Not taking anything away from Stephanie, but it's not like you lost because the person was better than you. I mean, she was better than you on the night, but she might not be a better fighter than you, and she might, you might win that fight 9 out of 10 times, but you definitely lost this fight, and a big factor of that was that you just made a terrible decision, and your fight IQ was just horrible. So that's unfortunate to see, man. Obviously, want to see her get up and get the win and continue this win streak and keep the momentum. So hopefully she can sort of go reassess with her team, correct some of those things, and could have just been an off night, could just be something that just she's dealt with in the camp. I know that from sort of my own point of view, if you are preparing for something specific and you're like you can see fighters all the time, they're like, okay, I can't let this person get a hold of my leg. If he gets a hold of my leg, like for example, if you're fighting like a Ryan Hall, you're like, if he gets a hold of my leg, I'm in trouble. You spend the whole time focusing on that. I can't let him do that. I can't let him do that. I can't let him do that. Then ultimately, you see some of these guys subconsciously, they end up putting themselves like in that position anyway because they're so stressed about it. And I think that's kind of maybe what could potentially have happened with Jessie just there. Maybe in camp, she was spending a lot of time like worrying about the grappling sort of stuff and, you know, wanting to dictate how it takes place. And I think that's why she felt like she pursued the clinch and was like, if I can engage in it, I can take her down, I can be on top, and I can kind of dictate it. But it just went the opposite way. You got flipped on your head and armbarred. So, you know, these things happen, but she'll be back. She's got a great team behind her. She's a talented fighter. And, yeah, it's certainly not her first hiccup she's ever experienced in the sport. So, yeah, I have no doubt she'll be back again.
It's kind of an interesting point that about sort of having that sort of clinch situation in her mind as something that she wanted to avoid, and then that kind of just driving her into it. It's like when you've sort of got you know, there's like a purple elephant in the room, and you sort of tell yourself over and over and over not to bring it up, and then bang, out it comes. It was kind of that's kind of an interesting perspective there. But we talked about in episode 2 about the sort of the physicality that Jessica Rose Clark possesses, like, and that potentially being an advantage over Stephanie Egger, and she's probably got the more well-rounded skills as well. But it just seems strange that she just walked straight into her opponent's domain on the night. But it was probably one that they'll learn from in the end. But you know, I guess we kind of touched on this last week as well. But you know, where does that leave Jessica Rose Clark now? She's 34 years old. She had won her last 2. Looks like she's unranked now. And the top 10 at women's bantamweight is quality, right? So you've got for example, you got Macy Chazon at number 10. Like, she's a solid fighter, right? So you got Jessica Rose Clark unranked at 34. She's coming off a loss. Like, sort of where does she stand in the division? What are her prospects now going forward?
I think she's in a situation now where, like I said, you got to reassess with your team, and you gotta sort of be honest with this within yourself, and then your team's got to be honest with you as well. And if you're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna move forward, and we're pursuing this, and I want to win a world title, it's obviously not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, look at Glover, 42 years old, won the world title. So, you know, if you're looking at it from that perspective, she's got plenty of time. Obviously, I understand there's a bit of difference between, you know, fighting at the heavier weight classes as opposed to being in the sort of bantamweight division. But she definitely, you know, she can definitely come back from this and move forward and gain some momentum, and she can definitely find her feet again within the division and ultimately get herself back into the top, you know, get back into the rankings, get in the top 10, get in the top 5, and then make a run towards the belt. It's certainly possible, but there's got to be an honest discussion within yourself and some things that she obviously needs to figure out based on kind of the decision making on the night. But if anyone can pull it together and, you know, come back and find their feet and get their momentum back and do this, it's someone like that, man. She's obviously a powerful person both in and out of the cage. I'm sure everyone that'll watch this has paid attention to her from when she was on the local scene, and then, you know, with the UFC and kind of some of the hiccups she's dealt with in her life, sort of in her professional MMA career, but then outside of it. So she's obviously a strong human being. So it's not impossible, but you just got to, she just got to sit down with herself and go, okay, I've got to do this, and here's what I need to do to be able to accomplish it. Let's go.
And yeah, we'll touch on the main event as well on the weekend. It was a bit of a crossroads fight of sorts. It was Jamal Hill, who's on his way up the rankings there. He's on a bit of a tear. Obviously, aside from the loss, he did suffer a loss to Paul Craig, where he got his arm snapped. But outside of that, he's been on a tear, just knocking people out. And it was no different on the weekend. We got Johnny Walker, who burst onto the scene. Looked like he was going to be a hot prospect there. He's now 1-4 in his last 5 starts. And he got absolutely slept by Jamal Hill in the main event. So I guess the question is like, how good is Jamal Hill really at the end of it? You know, he had his loss to Paul Craig. But looking at the light heavyweight rankings there's not too many grapplers in the top 10, so he could be a real problem up there from where I sit. But how do you sort of assess Jamal Hill?
Yeah, going into this fight, I saw the odds and it was like, Johnny Walker's like a 3-1 underdog, and I understand he's had a bit of a shocking run, but when I saw that, I was like, are you serious? Like, that's pretty disrespectful. I was like, what are these guys thinking? I was like, this Johnny Walker dude's got some talent. He's got some promise. He's training at SBG now with Kavanaugh. I'm like, what the heck? But after watching that fight and watching what Hill did to him, I'm on board. I'm on the train. I'm on board. I'm not doubting that dude one bit moving forward. So, and like you said, outside of Glover, there's not a lot of people in that top 10. They're going to be looking to take him down and try and sort of control him there. There's going to be guys that are going to welcome standing up with him and kind of trading on the feet. And as you saw, he put the pressure on. He was walking Johnny down the whole fight pretty well. You could tell he was making the reads, kind of picking the pattern that Johnny had. And if you watch the actual finish itself, Johnny Walker, he pushed him against the cage, drew the jab out of him, and then with his left hand peeled that lead hand down and looped over the top and kind of cracked Johnny on top of the head. And obviously he's got a lot of power in his hands, and then you've got the bonus of that you're pulling the actual arm down so he couldn't get it back to his his sort of head or jaw or anywhere and defend himself. Just landed like a beautiful shot with them 4-ounce gloves and kind of put him away. It was a strange knockout, actually, to watch the way he fell backwards and stuff like that. And I got some questions about what happened in his training camp, if he got knocked out in sparring. There might be something because even the way he said it, like when he put up a video from his hotel room where he's like eating pizza and drinking some proper 12 with his coaches and his people around him. And the way he kind of spoke about it and some of the other things I saw, it just seemed a bit weird. Like, but like you sort of said, the guy came in on a tear. He's, lost a few now. He's had a bit of a shocking run, but, he's training at a great gym. He's got a great coach. He could for sure find his feet again and rebound from this and sort of come back. But part of me thinks that a little bit of success is going to come from him going back to sort of what he was doing pre-training at SBG. He's got to be a bit more like bring that wildness out a little bit. Obviously, he's still control it and direct it, but he's got to be a bit more wild and crazy and having fun in there. I think him just trying to come in there and be like a calm, flowy sort of fighter and patient and kind of just stay there and have that sort of McGregor-esque approach where you're kind of looking to counter and do all. That's not him. And he'll kind of expose that. And like I said, I'm on board now. I'm on the train, so I'm not picking against Jamal Hill anytime soon. So I'm excited to see what's next for him. And he's definitely got the ability to come in there and keep sleeping people.
Absolutely, he's got that touch of death, knockout power, as they say. So it's hard to bet against someone like that. They're never out of the fight. But kind of like you touched on there with Walker, he kind of he looked a bit sort of tentative, didn't he? He looked kind of I don't know. He didn't sort of have that sort of freedom that he had early in his UFC tenure. With he's tried some flashy techniques in the early fights. He doesn't seem to do that anymore. He kind of, and like you touched on there, he seemed to kind of revert back to some more textbook techniques, and it hasn't really worked for him. But he seems to lack a little bit. Just from watching, and like I'm no fighter, right? I'm just an armchair expert. I sit there and back and watch the fights, but he kind of, he's fast, he's athletic, but he seems to just lack some of those sort of basics in terms of just defense and timing and things like that. He just doesn't seem to be able to see what's coming back at him, and you sort of get that feel a little bit from Conor McGregor as well. He's a bit of a front runner, like he kind of just plows forward. He's good at when he's landing shots and when things are going well, he's good, but sort of lacks a bit of the head movement. And once things turn against him, he sort of wears shots. And Johnny Walker kind of looks a little bit the same to me.
Yeah, he's definitely got that a bit. It's a combination of changing his fighting style and, the wildness sort of being taken out a bit and him not being as comfortable fighting the way that he's fighting. And then also I think he's got that similar trait of when the momentum's going his way, he's a world beater. As soon as he faces the adversity, he doesn't know how to adjust and then kind of just shuts down within himself. And that's that's something that would be very hard to deal with and rebound from and sort of work on. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't even be able to tell you how to start to even correct that or deal with that or how difficult that must be. I've seen it so many times with fighters where it's a mental thing that, they have this momentum, they're doing really well, they look superstars. Then, they get someone who's like, you know what? No, I'm here to fight. I'm here to win, and kind of give them some adversity to deal with. And then they're just like, oh no, I don't want to be here. This isn't what I signed up for. So I think he's got a lot of work to do within that, and he's got a lot of work to do within, kind of just being honest with himself. And looking at Conor McGregor and looking at some of his recent performances and like, the way that they approach things, how involved is Kavanaugh in that sort of process? And if Kavanaugh is involved, is he just a yes man? Is he just telling you everything you want to hear? I'm not saying that's the case, but it very well could be. He hasn't had a good run lately, let me tell you that. He's a far cry away from the coach that helped someone get 2 belts in 2 different weight classes simultaneously.
Yeah, there's definitely some questions being posed there on social media anyway about the sort of legitimacy of SBG Ireland, but that's probably another a topic for another day. But while we're on the UFC, we've got I wanted to quickly touch on this weekend's fights. We haven't got any Australian or New Zealand fighters represented, but in the main event we've got Islam Makhachev versus Bobby Green. Bobby Green's obviously stepping in on short notice to replace Beneil Dariush. Now Bobby Green was in the ring on February 12th against Haq Parast. That's only 10 days ago now. So I guess I wanted to touch on that main event there. Like, how gangster is Bobby Green stepping in 2 weeks after fighting against a killer like Islam Makhachev? Like, that's going to be an interesting one for sure.
He's an absolute savage. I can't take anything away from him. I like Bobby Green, man. He's a one-of-a-kind human being. He's a wild dude. Credit to him, and I hope the UFC is paying him a great amount of money. And I've seen a few reports today, and Dan Hooker even came out and said something that guaranteed they asked a bunch of ranked dudes if they want to step in and fight, and they would have said no thank you, not a chance. Bobby Green's a savage, albeit a very small, minuscule chance. There's a chance that dude throws some hands, lands some punches, and puts Islam away, but I highly doubt that. I think we're going to see Islam come out and do what Islam does. And unfortunately for Bobby, like you watch that Nasrat fight, dude's got great head movement, he's got great boxing, but something that people are like forgetting, and like actually had a conversation with Volk about this, every time he's doing all that cool head movement and he's getting out of the way from the hands, his hips and his legs are right there. You fight someone that's got good leg kicks, they're going to kick the crap out of your legs, and then pretty soon, or the body's there too, pretty soon that head movement and that sleek boxing, that's going to go out the window. Now you amplify that by 5 million. You got a guy who might be the best wrestler / grappler in the division. No knock on Greg Gillespie. I know he's also in the division. He's a credentialed wrestler, but let's be honest, Islam Makhachev is probably the best grappler / wrestler or MMA grappler wrestler in the sport at the moment in that division. All it's going to take is a couple of punches to be thrown Bobby's way from Islam, who also is quite handy on the feet. I think people forget that the dude is handy on the feet. They they draw comparisons to Khabib with Islam, but you've seen people say he's Khabib 2.0 because he can strike a little bit and stuff like that, and he's a bit patient on the feet. But it's going to be a simple night for him in the office if he throws a few punches Bobby's way, and we see Bobby sort of slip those punches with the head movement, but your hips are right there, and you give someone like Islam an opportunity to get to your hips and get close to you, you're going to have a very bad time. As gangster as Bobby is, and as awesome it is to see someone step up and face Islam, I'm going to call it like it is. I think it's going to be a first round win to Islam by submission. Like, I don't see the fight going another way.
Yeah, it definitely looks that way. It's a tough matchup on paper for Bobby Green, but it's kind of a free hit for him, right? Isn't it? Like, he's sort of he's outside of that upper echelon of the division. So if he steps in and he gets beaten handily like we probably expect that he will, well, he probably doesn't really lose anything. He's a gangster for stepping in there against a killer like Makhachev. on
Yep.
short notice. If on the off chance he manages to land that punch, or if he pulls this one out, then his stock is through the roof. Whereas probably for a ranked fighter, it's probably the opposite. It's sort of high risk, low reward, right? Islam Makhachev, he's starting to get some recognition that he deserves now, but he's probably still a guy who's probably not one of the marquee names yet, except he's a killer. Like he's a very, very risky proposition to accept a fight with someone like him. So Bobby Green's got it. It's all to gain and nothing to lose, really.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he snatches all the hype away from Islam if he wins this fight. And like you look at Islam's win streak that he's on and what's happening, this puts Bobby Green right within the top 5 of the rankings if he beats someone like Islam, and gives him all the momentum. And some of these other lightweight fights would match up really well stylistically for someone like Bobby Green, like a Poirier or a Gaethje, or a Chandler. These guys are going to be more than willing to stand on the feet and bang it out with you. And that's, as you saw with his fight against Nasrat, it's not really a place where he's going to struggle at all. But it's obviously everything to gain for Bobby, everything to lose for Islam. But the safe bet, if you're a betting person, guys, is bet on Islam to win by submission. I guarantee you, you're gonna keep some money.
And you're probably going to have to put a fair bit of money down to actually make anything back on that one. I think it's going to be one of the longer odds of the year so far for Bobby Green. So we'll probably leave it there. So you're obviously a freestyle fighting guy. You've got some visitors at the gym at the moment. So you've got some more work to get in with the boys from City Kickboxing this week.
Yeah. So the boys from City Kickboxing are obviously down here. We got a couple of the guys from there. We got Eugene in, we've got Bloods, we've got Carlos, we've got a few of their other coaching staff that are in. So it was obviously, I think it was easier for the boys to come to Australia, spend some time here, then be able to get back in New Zealand, then be in America, wait on their little ticket listing, whatever New Zealand's got, and then get back into the country. It's obviously awesome to have those guys there. They got here yesterday and then pretty well just got stuck straight in. So had a bit of a move around last night with Bloods, did some touch sparring sort of stuff, albeit to Joe Lopez's dismay. He didn't really want me moving around with anyone, doing any sort of stuff, even as if it was light touch sparring and stuff like that after my fight, which makes sense. He only wants me to sort of take some time and kind of, rest up a little bit and not go too crazy too quickly. But it's been awesome having those guys in so far. Obviously, I think there'll be a bit more work to be done with them over the next few days or next week or so. So it's kind of just soaking it in. And then if you looked at the mats tonight, you would have saw just a range of killers. We had some other extra visitors pop in today. We had Tyson Pedro, he was in there. We had Arlene stepping in, who's out here just being a savage in Bellator, just putting people away, looking to get another shot at Cyborg. So, it's a crazy time to be at freestyle. So I'm just enjoying it and soaking it all in.
Absolutely, what a time to be on the mats over there. But we'll touch base on this in next week's episode, and we'll see how you get on with some of the guys from City Kickboxing. We'll get some reports, get the inside track on some of the guys there. That'll be a fun one. But until then, remember everyone to like and subscribe. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Fight News Australia, Podbean, and we're now on Google Podcasts. I finally got that one over the line.
Yes.
I have not got Apple Podcasts over the line just yet. That is still ongoing. I did say hopefully by episode 3, but hopefully by episode 4 I might get that one over the line as well. But we might just say that every week. Has he got Apple Podcasts over the line? Probably not. But
it'll get there. It'll get there.
We'll get there one day. One day we'll get there, and maybe we'll have a little celebration on the podcast when it finally gets over the line. But until then, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Remember to like and subscribe, and thank you again, Lockjaw, for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I look forward to seeing how everyone responds to episode 3.
I gotta watch it, you never know what might stop you. Here I am.